with the name of Allah Almighty.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Umer Ahmed from MBA 5th morning, and today we have a presentation, group presentation. My presentational companion is Mr. Amar Ihsan. So we both are from MBA 5th and we both are from Federal Urdu University, Art, Science and Technology. Our learning subject is LRM, which is Labor Relationship Management, in the instruction of Dr. Khalid Khan. Today we are going to discuss about our presentation topic, which is Pakistan Hidden Worker. We found this topic is very interesting and informative that highlights the wages and conditions of Pakistan's home-based workers and informal economy of Pakistan. Hi Amir, tell something about the ILO's report 2014 to our viewers.
Okay, this report consists of two chapters which will cover the following topics. The first chapter is the continuum of informality and the global value chain. In this chapter, we will cover the following topics. The first one is many phases of informality. The second one is the global value chain. The third one is link between formal and informal economies. The third one is value chain originated from Pakistan. The fourth one is supply chains in the informal economy of Pakistan. The fifth one is domestic market. The sixth one is Gulf Cooperation Council and regional markets. The sixth one is multifunctional areas in the supply. Forward to chapter 2, which is home-based workers, time, money and labor. In this chapter, we will cover background of home-based workers, profile of home-based workers, income earning activities, hours and monthly income of home-based worker, wages per type of work outsource, comparison for hourly home-based work, wage rate with minimum wage in Sindh, dependency of employers or contractor, skill, and the last one is skills, information and knowledge of market.
First of all, we discuss about the introductory slides. Like introduction, this report is authorized by MI Chow Texas Lab and the research team led by Zahra Khan, member of Home-Based Workers Federation. The research was taken in two main areas of Karachi. So, basically the aim of the research was to map and trace supply chain in Pakistan informal economy and global supply chain in the textile and the garment industries, and to assess the wage level of the home-based worker contributing to informal economy. It is hoped that the approach adopted to the calculate in the working hours and wages of the home-based worker will support the work of the minimum wage board, particularly in the Sindh, in expanding minimum wage protection of the including worker home-based workers. The research and its recommendation build upon the ILO's 2014 Global Firm Wages and Working Hours in the Garments and Footwear Industries. Moving forward to introductory slides, this report also assesses the wage level of home-based worker contributing to the informal economy to identify the link between the informal economy and supply chain in textile and garment industries. Research conducted between May and December 2016 focused areas of Karachi are Godhra and Town in New Karachi and District West in Orangi Town. So, reports show the wage level of women working within the informal economy in Karachi, and household survey was developed by the research team in English and Urdu. Type of work were identified in the survey questionnaire. Informal sector mapping and tracking. The informal sector mapping is primarily qualitative in nature, drawing on interview with stakeholders in informal enterprises and workers in informal jobs. The research team conducted for the informal sector mapping and tracking over a period of 15 days in July 2016. The researchers sought to identify different elements within the informal textile and garment economy composing home-based workers themselves, middlemen and contractor godowns, and informal factories of varying size where goods could be traced further. The wholesale and retailer markets were visited. Unannounced visits were conducted and were appropriate followed up with pre-arranged meetings. So, these are types of worker are enlisted in this report. Some of our type of worker include in questionnaire. like suppose cropping, stitching, packing, beadwork, sorting work, embroidery, ironing, labeling, stake stitching, zip work, fusing, buckle and bunch, lace cutting by hand, lace cutting with machine, and abaya and valley stitching, etc. and etc. Area covered by the household survey, New Karachi Central District, like Bismillah Colony, number 8 shop, Bismillah Hotel, Timber Market, Kulsum Hotel, Rahmani Masjid, Market Area, Abbasi Nagar, Double Store, 11G, Sadiq Mohalla, and in Aurangi Town District West, like Sector 11, Sector 1112, Sector 13, Sector 14, Sector 15C, Sector 16, Mansoor Nagar, Ghaziabad, and Data Nagar. This report consists of 2 chapters. The first chapter is about the continuum of informality and the global value chain. Here this part of report covered the main focus of informality. In Pakistan, distinction between formal and informal worker is based on a shared understanding across government, trade unions and employers. The understanding consider informal enterprises to be those that are unregistered for the purpose of tax and employees benefit. Informal workers are seen as those who work at home in unregistered enterprises or those in registered enterprises who do not possess a formal letter of appointment and in respect of whom contributed to social protection schemes are not made. For example, 72.6% of all labor protection is informal. Moving forward to the second part of this chapter is the global value chain, which is very important. Global commodity chains are often characterized by 2 different economy networks depending on the nature of the industry, producer driven or buyer driven. For example, capital and technology intensive industries such as those producing automobile, aircraft and heavy machinery are usually considered to be provider driven. Supply chain or large manufacturers tend to play a central role in coordinating production networks. Buyers-driven commodity chains tend to exist in industries in which large firms, retailers, and branded manufacturers are essential in setting up decentralized production networks in a variety of exporting countries, usually developing countries. Outsourced manufacturing. Pakistan is one of the countries to which manufacturing is outsourced by global retailers and international brands. However, both producer-driven and buyer-driven commodity chains exist in Karachi's textiles and garment industries depending on the intermediate final destination the products, like countries with low wage cost, middlemen, home-based workers. The another important part of this report is link between formal and informal economy. This diagram shows the demand for labor, intermediate products and services. The formal sector utilizes the capital, unskilled labor and skilled labor in production and produce are targeted goods which is both an investment and consumption of goods. The informal sector use capital and unskilled labor in production and produce a non-targeted consumption goods. Pakistan large textile and garment industry combines both the formal and informal economies, like mentioned in this diagram. Here are another diagram which further explain the bilateral commodity chain to the European Union's or US markets. By contrast, production for the domestic market and export to the GCC Gulf Cooperation Council and regional markets demonstrate producer-driven commodity chain. See the figure below. This producer-led supply chain demonstrates high levels of informality, non-compliance with national and international labor standards in the absence of pressure from buyers from compliance. The another important part of this report, supply chain in the informal economy. The researcher identified a complex web of the relationship within the informal economy and links to the formal economy. The extent and degree of the linkages between the formal and informal economy in Karachi's textile and garment industry vary depending on whether the commodity chain is buyer-driven or producer-driven and on the intended final destination of the products. The 3 most important and interrelated markets for textile and garment produced in Pakistan are: number 1, the domestic market, number 2, the Gulf Cooperation Council and regional markets, number 3, the US and European Union international markets. The domestic market is primary market for the informal sector in Pakistan's textile and garment industry is the domestic market. The Gulf Cooperation Council and regional markets, according to this research, identified several possible routes by which products manufactured in the formal economy in Karachi's enter the global supply chain, the consumer in GCC and regional markets. Here are formal economy export to the US and European Unions and elsewhere make significant part of a Pakistan economy. However, major international retailers and brands from US and European Union have up concern about reputational risk with sourcing from Pakistan, which limits the share of overall export order from Pakistan. A small group of their top-tier manufacturer in Pakistan considers sufficiently compliant with both national and international labor standards to supply international brands and retailers, which have a close relationship with their suppliers and conduct regular compliance audits. Moving forward, the informal economy in Karachi's textile and garment industries is complex, and the actors involved are diverse, multi-level, and multifunctional. They include informal enterprises that engage in production and distribution, including godowns, workshops, factories, shops, and wholesalers, and informal workers associated with these enterprises, including contractors who distribute work, middlemen, and home-based workers. From here, I would like to call Mr. Amar Ihsan to continue the further presentation according to his point of view. Over to Amar Ihsan.
Thank you so much, Umar. Before going to start the remaining presentation, I would like to introduce myself. I am Amar Ihsan, student of MBA, fifth morning. Disintegrated and dispersed mode of production. The informal economy, the mode of production is intricately divided and dispersed rather than vertically integrated. Each component of value chain is broken down into a discrete process or task. These processes and tasks can then be outsourced, each with a different piece rate. Informal enterprise also outsource to informal workers and home-based workers. The first picture shows two informal cut trim and trim factories in New Karachi. The second picture, godowns, clockwise from top left, dyeing, sorting, screening, printing, and recycling. In turn, factories and godowns outsource certain processes to home-based workers, certain discrete tasks, and distribute among home-based workers, either directly or through a middleman or contractor, usually within a limited geographic area of neighborhood. Tasks outsourced to home-based workers are also finally differentiated and disintegrated. Value chain originated from Pakistan. This is also a report of chapter first of this report. As Pakistan places in the global value chain in the textile and garment industry is still relatively low. Although Pakistan can accommodate the entire value chain of textile and garment production, the value added achieved is very low. Around 40% of Pakistan overseas shipment consists of yarn and fabric, which are considered to be low value added export. High value added products such as ready-made garments comprise only 30% of export. Home textile, towels made of garments, synthetic textile, raw cotton, and other goods make up the balance. As you see in below report, in 2015 value of textile export was 9 billion, and 2019 value of textile export was 13 billion. Domestic market. Informal enterprise is visited by the researcher mostly supply to the domestic market. An informal enterprise will often maximize earning opportunity by working with two revenue streams as manufacturer and as a producer of their own house brand, as shown in these cases studies. You can see the below examples: Walid Orangi Town and Alip Abaya, Bolton Market, Sadr, Central Karachi's informal enterprise. Gulf Cooperation Council and regional markets. Research identified several routes by which the product manufactured in informal economy in Karachi Center, the GCC, and regional markets. Multifunctional actor in the supply web. The supply web is a network of interrelated supply networks, each embedding interlaced supply chain involving multiple organizations with collaborative or competitive supply relationship. As you can see in this diagram, the concept of supply web and international markets. Chapter 2: Home-based workers, time, money, and labor. Background: the home-based worker paid on piece rates. Look at the diagram. In center, place rates across all different type of garments. On the top, Ahmedabad, India, 0.27. In Ahmedabad, in the right, in Bangkok, Thailand, 0.71. And the left corner, Pakistan, Lahore, is the lowest rate, which is 0.32. Profile: home-based worker profile. Among the workers surveyed, 97% earn in an income exclusively As a home-based workers, only 14 of respondents had waged work of various kinds. 2 were working in a textile or garments factories. Respondents reported an average of 7 hours per day spent on home-based work. More than a third of home-based workers had no rest day. In total, 61% of home-based workers work more than 6 days a week. Like a survey conducted with 406 households, majority were women, only 2% were men. Married, unmarried respondent, level of education. Household average monthly income per home-based worker was 16,275 PKRs. Income earning activities. Here are most common activities done by home-based worker were cropping, stitching, beadwork, embroidery, labeling, zip work, sex stitching. Hours and monthly income of home-based worker. Placed at bottom end of informality continuum, home-based workers are chronically and significantly underpaid. On average, the home-based workers surveyed and their helpers work 12.3 hours per day, 6 days a week, and draw a monthly income of 4,342 Pakistani rupees from their labor, equivalent to $41.42. Their average hourly wage rate across all work type is 41 PKR per hour, 0.39, which is $0.39. Just 60% of current statutory minimum wage, PKR 67.5 per hour in any working day. Cropping, the most common task distributed to home-based worker, is paid at about a quarter of minimum wage rate. Below are the diagram. This diagram shows hourly monthly income generated through home base. This diagram shows you can watch this day per week 6, hour per day helpers 5.3, and hour per day home base workers 7. Total monthly earning 4,342 PKR. Wage per type of work outsourced. The below table shows the mean hourly pay per type of work. Bed work 15.68 mean average per hour, cropping 17.65, stitching 34.77, sex stitching 45.43, and embroidery 127.56. You can also check the respondent engage in this work, like bed work 33, cropping 105, stitching 72, sex stitching 11, and embroidery 38. You can watch a below bar chart which shows wage per type of works in PKRs and minimum wage. Like bed work, the wage is 15.68 and the minimum wage is 67.5. Look at cropping, the wage is 17.65 and the minimum wage is 67.5. Moving forward to stitching, the wage is 34.77 and the minimum wage is 67.5. Moving forward, sex stitching, the wage is 45.43 and the minimum wage is 67.5. Moving forward, the embroidery, the wage is 127.56 and the minimum wage is 67.5. This is another diagram which shows wages rate and percentage of minimum wage. Look at the cropping. Cropping is 25%, stitching is 45%, and hourly rate for all except all tasks is 60%, and hourly rate for all tasks except embroidery is 45%. Hourly wages rate and source of work compared to the minimum wage. Hourly wage rate per piece rate worker. The minimum wage applicable at the time of the household survey was 67.50 PKR per hour in any working day. 49. The household survey sought to provide wage data that could be meaningfully benchmarked to statutory minimum wage rate. The questionnaire asked respondents to provide the following information: the type of work that were engaged in. Like you can see in bar chart, the relevant payment unit for that type of work, the piece rate per the unit, and the average time spent on completing the unit. Comparison for hourly home-based work wage rate with minimum wage in Sindh, and ability to influence wage. In previous research among home-based workers in Lahore showed that 86% of piece rate worker had to accept price set by their intermediary or employer. The factors that affect worker ability to influence wage rate include the level of dependency on their employee or intermediary for work. 54% their access to the market. If any excess to knowledge and information about the labor market and any competitive advantage they might have. You can see the below bar chart which show the comparison of hourly rate for home-based worker and minimum wage in Sindh. Hourly home-based work wage is 40% and the minimum hourly wage is 65%. Dependency on employers or contractor. Only 4 of the workers surveyed had more than one source of work. A contractor from the same neighborhood was the primary source of work for 47% of respondents. Among this group of workers, 30% of subcontractors from godowns or some informal factories and 19% work from middlemen. Only 2.5% of workers had direct relationship with a retailer or wholesaler. Most were highly dependent on single work provider. 99% of workers who worked the contractor were reliant on just one contractor. Only 2 out of 192% workers who received work from contractor had relationship with 2 contractors. Of those workers subcontracted directly from godowns or some factories, 96% had only one source of work. Among those who work with middlemen, 98% were entirely reliant on that one person. Work source and dependency single source. Percentage of workers for whom provides is the main source of work. 19.26% middlemen or women, 47.41 contractor, 30.37 godown small factories and 2.47 shop and 0.50 others. Look at the percentage of workers with only one work provider. 98 middlemen or women, 99 contractor, 96 godown small factories, and so on. Skills, information and knowledge of market. Here we discuss low skills and low value work. The most home-based workers are engaged in low skill and low value work where they have little competitive advantage. Cropping is the most common primary work type, which is 28%, followed by stitching and labeling, which is 19% and 14% respectively. Embroidery and home and bed work were also common, which is 10% and 8%. Most workers surveyed were engaged in only one type of work. Some 45% were engaged in 2 or more types of work, and among this group, about a third were stitching sacks and another third did zip work as secondary activities. So that's all about low skills and low value work. Here we discuss about limited knowledge. The piece rate home-based worker had limited knowledge both of commodities on which they work and the labor market in which they participated. Among the workers surveyed, only 23% were aware of information other than the identity of their contractor or employer. In addition, very few had knowledge of the prevailing statutory minimum wage and could not benchmark their wage. Only 8% of respondents correctly identified the applicable minimum wage in Karachi at the time of survey.
Here come to the conclusion. The research identified a complex web of relationship within the informal economy and the link between the formal economy. This research report highlights the link between the work undertaken by home-based workers and also the various layers of the informal and formal economy in national and in some cases international supply chains. It also aimed to show wages level of women working in the informal economy in Karachi. The report outlined the series of recommendations to Government of Sindh to address the decent work deficiencies in the informal economy. Government actions also required as home-based workers face considerable challenges in negotiation for higher wages.
So we finally reach to the conclusion of this report. The purpose of this research is to assist Government of Sindh to formulate labor policy for home-based worker by identifying complex web of relationship within the informal economy and link to the formal economy. Besides that, the research elaborate home-based workers' impact on the national and international supply chain in textile and government sector. The home-based worker have immense market opportunity. For this purpose, trade-related capacity of home-based workers need to be improved along with safeguarding basic employees' rights including wage rate. If you are interested to know more about the hidden workers in Pakistan, you can read the ILO's report 2017 from their official website. Thank you so much.